Hello, and welcome. In this video, we'll be exploring the concept of moral responsibility, a fundamental principle that guides ethical behavior in both our personal lives and professional settings. By the end of this video, you'll have a solid understanding of what moral responsibility means, how it applies to both individuals and corporations, and why it's essential in the business world. Let's start with the basics. Moral responsibility is about individuals and organizations having a duty or obligation to act in line with ethical principles. This means being accountable for what you do, especially when your actions affect other people or the environment. Think of moral responsibility as a kind of guiding compass that helps us make sense of the big decisions we need to make in our personal lives and in our professional roles. It's about making choices that are not only legally compliant, but also ethically sound. For example, let's say you work for a manufacturing company that is disposing of waste materials. You realize that the current disposal methods are harming the local environment, even though they comply with legal regulations. You have a moral responsibility to speak up and push for more sustainable practices, as continuing with the status quo could cause long-term environmental damage and harm the community. Now, let's take a look at the difference between individual moral responsibility and corporate responsibility. Individual responsibility is pretty simple. It's about your personal duty to act ethically. In a business context, this might mean sticking to ethical guidelines, treating colleagues with respect, or making sure your work meets certain standards. But what happens when we move from individuals to entire organizations? This is where corporate responsibility comes in. A corporation, even though it's not a person, can be seen as a moral agent. This means that the corporation, through its policies, actions and decisions, can be held accountable for its impact on stakeholders, including employees, customers and the community at large. However, it's important to remember that corporate responsibility is an extension of individual accountability. Ultimately, a company's actions are down to the decisions made by individuals within the organization. This brings us to the idea of moral agents. Basically, a moral agent is anyone or anything that can make ethical decisions and be held responsible for them. In business, both people and companies can be moral agents. For example, an employee deciding whether to report unethical behavior is exercising individual moral agency. At the same time, a company deciding to implement a sustainable business model is exercising corporate moral agency. It doesn't matter if we're talking about individuals or corporations, ethical standards are there to guide us on how to behave responsibly. These standards might include things like honesty, integrity, fairness, and respect for others. So, why is moral responsibility important in business? Simply put, it's the foundation of trust and reputation. Businesses that prioritize ethical behavior are more likely to build strong, lasting relationships with their customers, employees, and the broader community. On top of that, moral responsibility encourages sustainable practices and decision-making that considers the long-term impact on all stakeholders, not just short-term profits.